Hello everyone, my name is Salma. I'm from Egypt. I will be the moderator of today's session along with my friend Lama Kmail from Jordan. First of all, I would like to thank all of you for being here with us in our first International Metropolitan online event related to the Arabian chapter as a part of Metro X series. Let me give you a brief about our fellowship. International Metropolitan Fellowship is an international and interdisciplinary community supporting governments, academic, and professional sectors in building up and spreading metropolitan disciplines, planning, and management to achieve sustainable development. Today, we are pleased to welcome Mr. Pedro Ortiz, the founder of the fellowship, and Mr. Mark Ronaldo, the president of the fellowship. They will be sharing with us more information about the fellowship and the Metro X series and how can you join our community. But before welcoming them to the floor, let's watch a short video presents us.
Mark, can you please share the video?
Okay, wait. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, yes, it's up. It's clear.
Okay. Oh.
Again, we are pleased to welcome Mr. Pedro, the founder of the fellowship. Pedro works for the European Union and the government of India in strategic and structural planning. He also has been in charge of planning and urban management for the metropolises of Madrid from 1988 to 1999. With that, I ask to give you your full attention and help me welcoming Pedro to the platform. Pedro, the floor is yours. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you so much, Salma. Well, just to introduce the IMF, we are more than 220 professionals all around the world, as you see from the map that Salma is sharing. We are from 51 countries, so we cover the whole globe. And we are focused on metropolitan issues, management and planning, not in urbanism. Urbanism is a science that we know for 170 years already, and all the solutions are there in urbanism. The problem is that administrations do not generally implement them. But metropolitan management and planning is a new discipline. We only had large metropolis for the last 70 years, and we don't yet know, we don't yet have all the tools to manage those large metropolis of soon. New Delhi is going to be 42 million inhabitants only in New Delhi. So we don't have the tools and we have to build them. And the IMF, the International Metropolitan Fellowship, is the team of people, the team of professional fellowship that is building up that discipline and sharing the knowledge, south-south, north-south, north-north, whatever, to share that discipline and that knowledge, both by practice and by theory. There are elements of theory, but there are as well elements of practice, and we are all sharing that. So this is part of this aim, this objective of the IMF. You're all welcome to join the IMF, and you can write to any of us, and you will see the procedure. No cost to it, and this webinar is part of that effort and that research and that objective of sharing information. And we think that this comparative analysis of two metropolises that have uh, similar difficulties, similar problems, and different ones. So sharing that knowledge can help all of us to frame up the solutions that not only Cairo and Amman need, but any other metropolis on the world that might have similar situations. So thank you so much for inviting myself and for inviting the speakers today. And I hope that the event is going to be extremely interesting, as has been an event we had 2 hours ago, an analysis, comparative analysis between Jakarta and Rio de Janeiro, that when Jakarta is confronting the situation of the capital of the country, Indonesia, is moving somewhere else to a new town, to a new capital, and we have been focusing on the problems and the solutions that have to be implemented as Rio de Janeiro suffered 50 years ago. So thank you so much for that invitation, and Salma, I give you the floor back to you.
Thanks, Pedro. Thank you, Pedro. Now I would like to introduce Mr. Mark, the president of the fellowship. Mark is an architect and environmental planner, got his master's degree of urban and regional planning. Currently, he works as a consultant of UN Habitat. Help me welcoming Mr. Mark. Mark, the floor is yours. You have 2 minutes.
Hello, everyone. Good day. So from the Philippines, it's a good evening. It's around 10 in the evening. So we're very happy to have you here. So as mentioned by Pedro, we're developing from the IMF tools to manage metropolitan planning. And one such tool, Salma, can you hear me? I'm good. My audio is good. Salma?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, just wanted to check. Yeah, so one of the tools that we've developed for the IMF is the MetroX. So it's a platform that has been going on. As Pedro mentioned earlier, we just had the MetroX Jakarta, where we had a very interesting discussion. So it's a back-to-back event. Now we're having the for the Arabia chapter. So the MetroX is not just a traditional webinar. What we want, the purpose why we developed it is really to have a collective intelligence exchange, participative discussions, and really the outcome is an open, informal, but structured discussion. So we really look forward to very interesting discussions today. So what is the structure? Will be as much as possible engaging also the participants, a lot of questions that we'd like to be answered, and it's open to all. We've opened it because of the advocacy of the International Metropolitan Fellows to really pioneer, advocate, and spread the metropolitan discipline. So with that, I welcome you all and looking forward to a very interesting discussion. So Lama, I turn the screen to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's sessions again. Rapid growth and transformation of urban into metropolitan areas is a new phenomenon of the late 70 years that urban managers and decision makers are challenged to address. Amman and Cairo in the Middle East both are two examples of the metropolises which face population explosion and urban sprawl. In this session, we are going to talk about urban growth management in these two capitals, Amman and Cairo. So this session is divided into 3 sections with the 3 main questions, 20 minutes for each. We will open the floor at the end for any questions and comments. And before we are going ahead with the first section, I would like to introduce our guest. Today we have Professor Murad Kalalde, the president of the Jordanian Planning Forum. He is a Jordanian architect and holds the title of Doctor of Technical Science in Urban Planning and Architecture. Currently, he works as an educator at Al-Balqa Applied University. As well, he is working as a designer and urban planning consultant at Sunna Al-Aqar office. Welcome, Dr. Murad. Our second keynote speaker today from Egypt, Professor Ali Abdelraouf. He is an architect and urban designer, focuses on research within the domain of theory, criticism, and creativity in architecture and urbanism. Dr. Abdelraouf published more than 150 journal-referred papers, critical reviews, essay, in addition to books and book chapters. Currently, he is a professor at Hamad bin Khalifa University in Qatar Education City, and the leader of Green Urbanism and Planning Group at Qatar Green Building Council. He is also acts as head of Research and Development Unit at Ministry of Municipality and Environment in Qatar. Welcome, Professor Ali. According to United Nations 2014, 54% of the world's population lives in urban areas. This proportion is expected to increase to 66% by 2050. This huge growth takes me to think more about the challenges. For that, my question to Professor Ali and Professor Murad: what are the main challenges faced by rapidly growing metropolises in the Middle East, especially in Cairo and Amman? I would like to give the question firstly to Professor Murad, and then I would love to hear from you, Professor Ali. The floor with you, Professor Murad, and you have 10 minutes.
Thank you for inviting me to this session and to this webinar. And I would like to answer the question by highlighting some points. May I share my screen just to give a visual picture of what is going on in our capital, which is Amman. May I share the screen, please?
Mark, can
okay.
help?
No. Okay, yeah. Can you see it?
Yes.
Is it visible for you? Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Just allow me to highlight some issues in bullet form. Then I may come to conclusion. Just please, by that. We enjoy having a city that has historical ties that extend to thousands of years, which is Amman, as you know. The Roman theater and the Acropolis, which is the Qal'a, and it's in between colonnaded streets, functioned smoothly when transportation was based on horses and by foot. And nowadays, we have different types of transportation, and we cannot use the same roads that were available at that time to different centuries. The city started growing as a spider network from the historic center in all directions. As you see, in the map, the historic center, and it started to grow in all directions. I will come back to your question, but I need to pave the way in order to give a clear picture for those who don't know Amman. And it is a historic center. The amphitheater is in the center, and the Acropolis, which is Al-Qal'a, as shown in the previous slide. It is on the top of it. Beneath and in between are valleys. These valleys were used as roads and pathways, and expansion of the city started from this point. The valley routes limited the road width. As you know, when you have valleys and the expansion, the width of the roads will be limited because you have hills and the topography don't allow you to have wider roads. This is the first limitation that we have in Amman, and it will impact and still impacting the growth of the city. The rapid urbanization caused by the 1948 and the 1967 refugee influx to Jordan has curbed any strategic-oriented planning and let the municipality administration goes with the flow. The so-called organization was more like plot organization rather than organization. And now, next I will give the difference between plot organization as listed in laws and zoning. The so-called zoning, اللي هو التنظيم, was more like a plot parcellation rather than organization. The city fabric consisting of plot and road in between was a result of uncontrolled urban sprawl. Little attention was given to zoning, like in the division into district, neighborhood, cluster, parcel, block, and plot. As you know, when you are dealing with a city with historical center, and the expansion is influenced by political issues, little margin will be given to proper planning, where you can plan the city probably divided into districts, neighborhoods, cluster, parcels, blocks, and plots. Just a minute. The government depended on the revenues of taxes. That's why the encouragement of owning cars and the taxes collected by from that is a major source for the governments to have revenues. That's why little attention was given to control the increasing number of cars in the city. If we, excuse me, just مشكلة إنه I'm stuck here. Yes. The new liberal policies starting by millennium 2000 free the way to chaos, executed by the slogan, the market will organize itself. We will see that the changing policies made during the period of establishing the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, which was in 1921, and the new policies that were practiced since 2000 had a great impact on urban development. The withdrawal of the housing cooperation from housing production and freeing the market to be totally controlled by investors in housing sector was enabled through the new national housing strategy. I want to emphasize that these policies will have a great impact on the shape of the city, although these are administrative issues, but we will see at the end that the answer to your question is the conclusion of these all together, or the majority of the mentioned causes. The reform of the housing bank in 1997 from a bank established to give housing loans with low interest rates to commercial bank and large single housing projects. The government didn't build on success stories made by the housing cooperation in the 80s in Abu Nsair, where we find a well-organized district divided into neighborhoods. The total control of private investors in the housing sector and in absence of the public sector, which was wiped out from market intentionally, free the hands of small investors and land brokers. Weakening the housing cooperatives closed the path to organized zoning. Freezing the law of organizing cities and buildings, number 79 in year 1966, and its amendments, which is called the planning law, which set the roadmap for regional and urban planning, had and still having a great impact on urbanization. The law, that's why we emphasize on the law and its impact on urbanization. The law divides planning drawings into 3 levels, which are regional plans, structural plans, and detailed structural plans, or the so-called master plans. And what happened on the regional level? The initiation of the so-called development zones was launched according to the law, to a law that is in conflict with the planning law. The workplace and living place and the distance between them was not balanced to control the urban development. The government centers had little to do with the development zones. The absence of regional plans led to absence of land use and on the country level. I will get to the conclusion. I will not take a lot time after this. For Amman, get back to your question, the initiation of the so-called master plan of 2007, which is based on intensification, okay, to make use of the already existing infrastructure, doubled its inhabitants. Since then, ironically, Amman master plan called for the expansion of the area from 705 square kilometers before 2007 and added 975 kilometers to get a total of 1,662 square kilometers. Imagine that, for a small country to have the capital expanding area to 1,662 square kilometers. Greater Amman Municipality, GAM administration, retreated from this from this adopted master plan a couple of years after, and kept a vision to become a metropolitan city area, but stuck to its intensification plan. The dilemma is having a bigger area, which is in comparison with Jordan's total area, will have an agglomeration of population in a certain place. GAM master plan, which is done and approved in 2007, was divided into 7 stages. I will not get into the detail of these stages, like interim growth strategy, corridor intensification strategy, interim industrial land policy, divided and metropolitan growth plan, and district plan. retreating.
You have just 1 minute.
Yes, I will. Retreating from annexing these areas of about 900 square kilometer reduced GAM area. Holding to the intensification strategy shall keep the numerator and reduce the denominator, which raise the value. If we are going to reduce the area and keep the strategy of intensification, that's what they did, we will get a higher population density. That's why, just to close with it, that's why Amman is having real transportation problems, which are based on narrow roads, which are based on intensification strategy that doesn't cope with the area that has been foreseen for the 2025. That's why I think the issue of sticking to the strategy, which is called metropolitan strategy and intensification strategy, will impact the whole development of the city, I think, negatively. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Murad. The mic with you, Professor Ali.
Sure. I want to start by thanking you, Lama and Salma, for excellent moderation and coordination and organization. I want to also extend my thanks to my dear friend Pedro and to Mr. Mark, particularly for Pedro. I wanna stress for all our audience today that I'm extremely proud of him, not only because of our friendship and because he's an excellent colleague, but because of his commitment to sort of construct what would be, in my opinion, a sort of a paradigm shift in understanding the whole notion of metropolitan urbanism. And his knowledge is available via his websites, via his lectures, via his papers and books, and so on and so forth. So I am so grateful for him, and I'm so excited about the new chapter, Metro X, and thank you, Lama and Salma, and Mark, of course, for creating such a platform by which people from different parts of the world, particularly the Middle East, would be engaged in this. Thank you, Lama, for a very interesting question related to what are the main challenges of metropolitan cities, and particularly in the case of my beloved country, Egypt, the beautiful, magnificent city of Cairo. And I wanna start by stating two fundamental positions here, because I don't have slides, as I was instructed by the coordinators that we want to talk more rather than go to the typical form of presenting images. So I want to rely more on my narrative rather than images. The very first point, or the very first position that I want to share with all of you, and it would be great to have comments and discussions regarding this, is our perception of the metropolitan. Because it seems to me that for good number of reasons, we still under the idea of that the big is bad, that mega cities are dangerous, that metropolitan cities are something that we need to get rid of. And I think the different kind of alternative, the different kind of point of view that I would suggest all of you to consider is that the problem is not in the size, but the problem is in what are the tools that we are using to deal with the size. For instance, who would imagine the world without Paris? Who would imagine the world without Barcelona or Madrid or Washington, D.C., or Shanghai, and so on and so forth? All of those are mega metropolitan cities, and we enjoy all of those cities. We enjoy the facilities in those cities. We enjoy the spatial experiences. We enjoy museums, universities, parks, and so on and so forth. So the very first position that I want to share with all of you here, that we need to do a sort of a mindset kind of refresh or resetting our mindset to consider the problem not from the size perspective, but from how we are dealing with the size and how we are dealing with those kind of metropolitan structures. My second point is related to my city, Cairo. Although I live and I practice and I teach here in Qatar now, but my heart all the time is in Cairo, because this is the city that I was raised in, educated in, and I will be grateful for Egypt and Cairo for the rest of my life. I wrote a number of books. One of my books that I wrote in Arabic, called Mudun al-Arab fi riwayatihim, which would be in English, the cities of Arabs in their novels. And the main idea of this book was based on a very dedicated effort from my side to trace how Cairo was depicted in number of novels written by the outstanding novelists of Egypt, like Najib Mahfouz, Yusuf Idris, Khayri Shalabi, and so on and so forth. And because of this kind of, I would claim, fresh perspective to look at the city, I need to share with you my perspective regarding contextualization of Cairo, because it seems to me that Cairo is Kairos rather than Cairo. It's not a one Cairo. It's not a one city. My perspective about Cairo is that it is Kairos. It's عدة قاهرات. It's not one Qahira. Because the very first Cairo is the Cairo that was initiated by Mu'izz al-Din Allah and was constructed by Jawhar al-Saqili, is the walled city that we are aware of. And in some literature, we would describe it as the Islamic city, the city which is kind of walled, and you have the main gates like Bab al-Nasr, Bab al-Futuh, Bab Zuwayla, and so on and so forth. And then you have a second Cairo when the wall was crossed by Khidewi Ismail after his very famous visit to Paris and his excitement with Ali Mubarak about the different kind of planning perspective that he was able to see in Paris, and his desire to have this sort of a new spirit of boulevard and squares and gardens, and also the infrastructure, particularly the sanitation systems and so on and so forth. So you ended up with the second Cairo, which in some literature also we called it Al-Qahira al-Khidiwiya or Khidevi Cairo, right? And then we also crossed the Nile after that, because Al-Qahira al-Khidiwiya or Khidevi Cairo ended up on the edge of the Nile. And then the third Cairo was a jump over the Nile. And then we started to have extension towards the southern part and the pyramids and Giza and so on and so forth. And then we have a fourth Cairo when we centralized everything within Cairo. And therefore, people were forced to do an internal immigration coming from different parts of other cities and villages from all around Egypt. And they ended up with living around the sort of the peripheries of the city, resulted in what they called it al-ashwa'iyat, or what I would prefer to call it the informal Cairo, the informal part of Cairo. And then during Mubarak time, there was so much excitement, and also during Sadat, there was so much excited because of the economic openness policy. They started to look at examples in Hong Kong and Singapore and so on and so forth. And we started to see the globalized Cairo. And then finally, in what I saw now is happening in Cairo, I would call it the sixth Cairo, which is more a Dubaization of Cairo, a Dubaification of Cairo. I was so excited when they were sharing some ideas about what is happening in Cairo, and they said Dubai by the Nile, and it was very painful to me that a city with the history and the value of Cairo is referring to the concept of real estate fantasies, which is adopted in Dubai as a model to be replicated. So if you look at the complexity of metropolitan Cairo from this perspective, you would realize that it's a very complicated situation. It's accumulated situation. You have different kind of cities, you have different kind of relationships, but at the same time, you have one of a kind city. Cairo, for any person who would able to visit it, he or she would enjoy the narrative that I shared with you, from the Islamic to the Khedive to the waterfront development along the Nile. Even some of the very informal parts of the city are very exciting to look at, and so on and so forth. But then, as you asked us to talk about Lama, dear Lama, what are the challenges here? And I want to start by number one is what I called it, the informality of the formal. Meaning what? Meaning that the people who are responsible for planning the city are doing more informal and chaotic decisions than what the regular people are doing, in the sense that up till now, it's kind of hard to see where is the blueprint for the whole metropolitan Cairo? Where is the vision for the city? So this is, to me, a very fundamental challenge. Another interesting challenge is related to public transportation. The whole beauty of any metropolitan city in the world is related to public transportation and to which extent we invest in public transportation. And ironically, a lot of governments, and I think Pedro would support me in that, a lot of governments and city managers, they would delay investment in public transportation for the sake of investment in other venues which would be more visible to the people. In this case, in Cairo, you'll see a lot of skyscrapers and what have you. And they delay investment in public transportation until it's very, very late. So again, when it comes to a city like Cairo, you question why you have this incredible number of cars, why we still invest in roads and bridges and so on and so forth, and we are not investing in decent public transportation, metros, electrical system of buses, and so on and so forth. I am also excited about, do I have one more minute or I'm done? 1 minute, okay. I want to also stress the idea of lack of urban centers, because another very important feature about metropolitan cities is the wise decentralization, the creative decentralization, in the sense that you will divide the city in number of centers, and each of those centers, they have their own services, they have their own identity, they have their own sense of community, and so on and so forth. And then a final point, and we'll elaborate more, is also related to the excellent balance between the built environment versus public and green spaces. If you go to Barcelona, and Pedro is the architect of Barcelona and Madrid, you go to a city like Barcelona, and you will enjoy public and green and open spaces by far more than enjoying buildings. And my problem about Cairo is that we still building rather than investing in public spaces and open spaces and green spaces. And I will continue the discussion later. Thank you so much, Lama.
Thank you. Salma, the mic with you. You are mute. Salma, you are mute.
Sorry for unmute. Sorry. Well, thanks, Professor, for your speech. According to question one of our challenges we are faced by rapidly growing metropolises in the Middle East is the future expansion. So my question to Professor Murad and Professor Ali is how can we plan our metropolises, Metro Amman and Metro Cairo, with alternatives for future expansion? I would like to give the question to Professor Murad first, and then I would like to hear Professor Ali's opinion. Professor Murad.
Thank you. My very simple answer is stop having metropolitan cities and withdrawing people from cities to other cities in order to create balanced development. Our dilemma in the third world countries is trying to do what is done in other cities, like Dr. Ali said and mentioned, like Paris, Barcelona, and others, and perhaps not noticing the historical issues that they had in order to reach such kind of cities. I think like Jordan, like a country like Jordan, we have a very small population in comparison to Egypt. We have almost 10 million inhabitants, and almost half of them live in the capital. And if we have, and when we add the neighboring cities like Zarqa and Swaleh and Ursaife, we will have almost 65% of the population living in a metropolitan city that is now connected with each others. I think that's why in the first part I tried to mention the legislations which, if followed, will curb the creation of such cities. I am totally against of having a great or a big city on the expense of other territories where you find industry, tourism, and agriculture. All these economical matters should be connected to people where they are, because you cannot shift agricultural land from Al Ghor here in Jordan, which is the Jordan Rift Valley, to the eastern part, because these fertile lands are there at the Jordan Rift Valley. That's why we need population there in order to cultivate these lands, in order to grow there. At the other hand, you need people where the industry is there, and you need people where the tourist attractions, which we enjoy to have in Jordan, they are there. I cannot let the people all coming to the big cities in order, as you know, Professor Ali and others, why do cities exist? They will compete, start and will keep competing until the competition is almost zero. They will keep reducing the prices, and that's why cities exist. I don't like for my country to have an agglomeration of poor neighborhoods, people who don't live in good conditions, just to have a metropolitan city. Thank you.
Thank you, Murad. Dr. Ali, the mic is yours.
Thank you so much, Salma. I want to start here by stressing the fact that we are not preaching for transforming all our cities into metropolitan cities. I was so clear, and I think if you go into a decent literature related to metropolitan cities, you would realize that it's not about a one-size-fits-all kind of approach. No, all what I'm saying is that how we deal with existing metropolitan cities, how to deal with cities that because of historical reasons, because of economical reasons, because of political reasons, we ended up with very significant cities in the urbanity of the world. And therefore, I was saying in the beginning of my talk, who would imagine the world without Paris? Who would imagine the world without Barcelona? Who would imagine the world without Washington, D.C.? But at the same time, I'm not saying that every single city in the world should be a metropolitan, because this is also impossible. So this is point number one. Now, regarding how we should create an alternative for the future, I'm trying to answer your brilliant question, Salma. And I would start by saying that the city is also about providing economical platforms. And I think one of the fundamental issues that we need to consider in the future is what I called it creative economic platforms. The idea of dividing the city into a number of zones, and one of those zones would be industrial zone, as we did in the beginning of the 20th century and so on, is not valid anymore. We're talking about the knowledge economy. We're talking about creative economy. We're talking about attracting the knowledge worker and the creative workers and the whole work of Richard Florida and Charles Landry and so on and so forth. This is a new perspective about transforming the city into a creative hub. And therefore, it would create very distinguished and creative minds. I want to also stress the idea of acknowledging the value of metropolitan cities and also the idea of believing in the importance of metropolitan cities, and that every country should have one of those, at least one of those, and should be extremely proud of the existence of a metropolitan city with a global value. Transportation, creative transportation, effective transportation, affordable transportation is fundamentally important. And I think with all the advancement in technology that we can see now, there is no excuse for any city planners and city managers to overcome the idea of focusing on establishing an excellent and effective public transportation and transit-oriented mode of development. And when I say transit-oriented here, I'm talking about holistic network of transportation. I go to cities including Washington or Barcelona or other cities around the world, and I spend months and weeks without getting into a single car. Because from the airport to the hotel, to the university, to the shopping, to the park, to the museum, every single destination, you can do it using decent public transportation that is respecting you, respecting your privacy, respecting your humanity. One of my also predictions for positive metropolitan cities in the future, particularly in the Middle East, is related to housing. Housing is very important because housing is related to the dignity of people. But when I talk about housing here, I want to stress the affordability, and I want to stress also that this housing is providing an excellent quality of life, because in some of the cities around the Middle East, including Egypt, when we deal with housing projects related to the poor or the marginalized, we just keep on putting them in what I called concrete boxes rather than houses and homes. And I think this is important because if you notice, for instance, what is happening now in Cairo, in New Cairo or the New Alamein or New the new capital or whatever they ended up with calling it, 95% of the investment is towards housing the elite, housing the people that can afford to pay, as opposed to the rest of the 95% population of the country. So I think also the whole notion of the metropolitan city in the future is so much related to how we would respect and provide answers for housing that is affordable and providing an excellent quality of life. And my final point also is related to the planning regulations. I think we need more creative and updated planning regulations that would go beyond the notion of zoning or the notion of building very, very rigid building regulations like setbacks and heights and so on and so forth. We have to start on looking at the city as a sort of a living organism and looking at the city as a structure of lives rather than number of buildings and roads. Thank you. Thank you, Salma.
Thanks, Dr. Ali. Thanks, Professor, for your information.
May I comment on that? May I comment on that?
Yeah.
Yes. Dr. Ali, for all, I think with the retreat of importance of location, that was obvious after the COVID-19, that, as you said, we don't have to travel to our workplace and accumulate a lot of people in one place, in one area, in one metropolitan area. I think that we have to rethink the issue of fostering a metropolitan city or the whole idea itself. Why do we have our discussion today? I am presenting the case of Amman. We have so historical and topographical limitations that prevent us from letting more people into the city, because we have the hilly topography, and as I explained at the beginning, and we have historical ties started from the central of the city, which is the amphitheater, and we don't have the luxury to have the, as you said, a well-organized public transportation system, because it is in contradiction with the topography. And if we are going to do that, we will have to pay billions of dollars. And for what? If you have, if you think regionally, and that's why I emphasize on our, I think, which is a good one, in our law for planning law, just to think in 3 levels: regional and structural, and master plans as detailed structural. I think we are at a point that we all practitioners and theoreticals, and we should rethink the issue of metropolitan city and call for the withdrawal of people, as I said, into the suburbs.
Well, let me, if you allow me, Lama and Salma, let me elaborate on this. This is an excellent point, Professor Murad. Number one, I think we need to question. You said we need to prevent people from coming to the metropolitan Amman, and I would argue that we need to ask a more fundamental question: why people keep on coming to metropolitan Amman? Why people keep on coming to Cairo? Because if you look at the other cities, they lack working opportunities, they lack community services, they lack universities, they lack decent way of life, they lack the hope, H-O-P-E, literally. I am from Egypt, and I know that a lot of young people in other cities around Egypt, they feel that without going to Cairo, they will be missing the opportunity of their lives when it comes to working opportunities, education, even treatment, health facilities, and so on and so forth. So the very important point that we need to consider, as I said before, is the notion of authentic decentralization, and to be very honest and sincere regarding providing community facilities and all the services that people are aspiring for in different kinds of cities around the country. This is number one. Number two, I see what COVID-19 did for us, but at the same time, COVID-19 helped us in a lot of cities around the world, and some of them are so metropolitan, to reclaim open and public spaces, to reclaim streets, to stop the movement of cars, to say for the very first time in our modern history of cities and planning, that people own the cities rather than cars own the cities. And then my final point, Professor Murad, with all my due respect to the idea that investing in public transportation would be billions of dollars, and there are a lot of hinders regarding this, particularly the geographical and topographical obstacles in Jordan. But if you look at Latin America, for instance, if you look at a city like San Francisco, for instance, they have very complicated topographical situations, but they still rely on public transportation, and they invested a lot. Why? Because this investment on the short and the term periods, you will have a lot of returns, because you cannot imagine how spending time in cars is destroying people, destroying their health, destroying their creativity. When I go to Jordan, I was moving from my hotel to the university, which I would do it literally in 20 minutes walking. I spend an hour and a half in the car. And I think this is something that we need to invest whatever it takes in it to change it. So the whole notion of public transportation is not about how much we would invest, but it's about how much we would gain, particularly when it comes to human health and the value of cities that are more directed towards people rather than cars. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I agree.
Thank you, professors, for the informative speech and dialogue. And before moving to the third question, I would like to ask our participants to start put their question in the chat box or raise their hand for any question or comment. My third question today for our guest depends on the current situation in Amman and Cairo. How do you see the metropolitan planning moving forward in the next 5 to 10 years and beyond? The floor with you, Professor Murad.
Yeah, I mentioned that in the early presentation, and I will focus one more time on that. In Jordan, in Amman, we had several stages of planning. We are celebrating 100 years of state inauguration, and we can say that after 1948, which is the first wave of Palestinian refugees to Amman, and followed by 1967, we lost control on planning. The Jordanian government noticed that and invited 2 experts, UN experts, to help us in finding a way on how Amman would develop. These 2, King and Max, the experts, had the idea or presented the idea that we should lift the vehicle transport from the wadis, from the valleys upwards. And they had an idea to have something like bridges connecting the hills. And unfortunately, this idea was not expected or adopted, and that was the first big problem that we are now paying the price for. After that, the 50s, and we had some kind of master plan in 1986 done by Dar al-Handasi, which is one of the biggest consulting firms in the world. And unfortunately, GAM administration didn't يعني اللي هي get these plans approved approved by the government in order to be implemented and not changed by the coming mayors. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, and the expansion was happening very quickly until 2007. GAM had invited Canadian experts to do a master plan for Amman, and this is the very important thing that I have to highlight. The 2007 plan was based on an area of what Professor Ali said before, pushing Amman with an area of about 500 square kilometers to 1,600 square kilometers, 3 times bigger. I think this idea was a foolish one. Excuse me when I say that. And when you expand the area of a city to have literally the half of the population in a metropolitan city and assign corridors, 10 corridors, to do intensification above and on narrow roads, because we said that at the beginning, we don't have the luxury to have wider roads because of the topography. Merging the two things together, you have a master plan that call for a metropolitan city, that call for intensification, and that was even the 2007 plan. It was not legalized by the government, and the coming mayor after Omar Maani retreat from this partially. They reduced the area once again and kept the strategy of maximizing the density. That's why I said you will have more population density with a smaller area, and this is crazy, and we cannot. That's why you can't, as Professor Ali said, getting on moving from one part of the city to the other, it will take you 1 hour at least. By foot you can do it in the half of time. I think that we are in front of a very, very big problem, and they are trying to establish a public transportation system by the BRT, and we have a lot of challenges now in the trial period, and I think I am not optimistic. We should, as Professor Ali said before, we should go to decentralization. We have in Amman areas areas where people coming from other cities, Hayy al-Tafaili, for example, this is an area of people coming from Tafila city, and Hayy al-Karakiye from Karak. These people who came to work and have a decent life because you have more opportunities in the cities, but on the contrary, you will have a city, a crowded city, where you cannot control. Our only solution is inviting people to go back to their cities and connect them with real good economical opportunities in order to develop their areas.
Thank you, Professor Murad. The mic with you, Professor Ali.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Lama and Salma. Before talking about the coming 5 years or 10 years, I want to respond to a very interesting observation that I saw it in the chat box related to the notion of cars and the importance of cars and how cars are related to our ego and our identity and so on and so forth. And I agree. But at the same time, I just want to share a very interesting example of the audience today. As I said, I do teach and research and provide consultancy in Doha, Qatar. And for some of you who are not aware of that, Qatar is one of the richest countries on earth. And the GDP is one of the top on the world. And the affordability of cars is incredible. I mean, you're talking about 3 cars per person. And we're not talking about regular cars. We're talking about Land Cruisers and Porsches and Ferraris and Maseratis and what have you. But yet, with all of that, after we were able to provide extensive consultancy and extensive community awareness regarding the importance of public transportation and regarding investment in a very holistic metro system supported by BRT and other public transportation mechanisms, even local people are using public transportation. You will be amazed when you go into one of the metro stations in Doha and you will find not an expat family, but a Qatari family, a father and his wife and his kids using the public transportation to move from a destination to a destination. And to me, this is a paradigm shift. If we are able to do that in one of the richest countries on earth, then the whole idea is applicable in other places. The notion here is related to how you will provide a model for people by which they will feel how public transportation is saving their energy, is providing a different opportunity for them to socialize, is even from an economical point of view, is saving them their money, saving their health, moving them in a very faster manner from point A to point B. Now, let me move to my predictions regarding the future. And I want to admit for all of you that in the Middle East, we fall in love quickly in whatever is produced in the West. So suddenly I saw a lot of researchers and scholars and planners in the Middle East are talking about the 15-minute city, the 1-minute city, the compacted city, and so on and so forth. And to be honest with you, all of those notions are supporting the fact that metropolitan cities are here to stay. Because even in the model of 15-minute city, you cannot have a museum in each 15-minute city. You cannot have a university in each 15-minute city. You cannot have an opera house in each 15-minute city. And therefore, I would predict that we should move to a model by which we will look at metropolitan cities as a number of urban villages, as a number of a well-planned and well-designed urban centers. I want to also stress in the future the notion of housing affordability. I talked before about housing affordability, but I want to be careful here that when I talk about housing affordability, I'm not talking from a quantitative point of view, but also qualitative point of view. How those houses are providing a decent life for particularly the marginalized and the poor and low-income people. I want to also stress that in the future, we should encourage more a private-public partnership. The notion of the developer, particularly in the real estate and also transportation, that is coming only to gain profit, should be also adjusted via a dialogue with the government, a dialogue with the community that would end up with a winning situation for all the parties. So the developer would get return regarding his or her investment, but at the same time, the city would gain when it comes to its overall quality. I would also consider that in the near future, and particularly because of the lessons that we have learned from COVID-19, that we will start a different paradigm regarding the notion of metropolitan cities as a healthy city, in the sense that it's not only about the affordability of medical centers and hospitals, but how the city, particularly when it comes to its spaces, green areas, parks, waterfronts, green walkable streets, pedestrian-friendly cities, environmental-friendly cities, all of this would end up with a more vibrant, but at the same time, healthy cities. And then my final point is related to climate change, because we need also to understand that in the scale of metropolitan cities, we can provide very solid examples and models of how to mitigate and how to be better prepared for the consequences of climate change. Thank you so much, Lama.
May I comment on that?
Yes.
Yeah. I think that we have different point of views or visions, and I think that it's healthy. I regret not approving or not I don't see that cities that you have to go to a museum or opera house after the experience that we had and we have now through communicating through virtual means and virtual reality. And I've seen some days ago a very good documentary about visiting museums and while you are staying at home. I think that we have as planners to rethink the issue of a city as a whole. And I call for the death of the metropolitan city era. This vision has to stop, because it is causing even affecting the climate change. And we in Amman, we signed because it is one of the agreements that we had to sign to reduce the CO2 emission. And I think, and I had a discussion with a master's student focusing on this issue, and we went through the points that Greater Amman municipality has signed, and I find at least that it is impossible. It is impossible to reach the numbers that we are asked to be reached by 2030 within 8 years. I think the only solution for that is I don't want to repeat myself, is to rethink the idea of a city as a whole. And that's why I want to emphasize on decentralization as path to have smaller cities and wider connections.
Can I also elaborate, Lama, in 2 minutes?
Okay.
Sure. I want to stress again, maybe this is my second or third time, I want to stress again that when we talk about metropolitan cities, we are not suggesting that this is the model to be followed in every single city around the world. I want to stress in a crystal clear format that metropolitan city is an inherited city. We are not inventing metropolitan cities. When we talk again about Cairo, about Amman, about Barcelona, about London, about Milan, about Shanghai, and so on and so forth. Can I just finish, Professor Murad?
Yes, please. Yes, just on the issue of Cairo.
We are talking about cities that, by the virtue of size, by the virtue of history, by the virtue of importance, by the virtue of significance, those cities are already metropolitan. And our job now is to provide the tools, the plans, the mechanism, the strategies by which those cities would provide excellent services and excellent spatial and planning and living experience for its dwellers. Now, saying that is not suggesting that every single city in the world should be transformed into a metropolitan city. And when we go to China, I go to China a lot and provide consultancy there. I all the time talk to my Chinese colleagues. No, don't go for metropolitan cities all the time. There is also a beautiful, beautiful sense of there is a beautiful sense also of small compacted cities. And when I provide consultancy here in Doha, in Qatar, we divided the cities of Qatar into a hierarchy of cities. So Doha is definitely a metropolitan city. But when we go to a city like Al-Wakra or Al-Khor or Al-Shamal, we use a radically different mechanism because the whole identity of the city, the structure of the city, the size of the city is suggesting more 15 minutes kind of approach, compacted city kind of approach. My second point to Professor Murad is related to the virtual versus the real, because you were suggesting that because of the virtual tours that we can do to museums and listening to opera via the internet or what have you, we're not going to go to museums anymore or to opera anymore. Well, I think the actuality of life proved that this premises, this hypothesis is totally wrong. I just came back from Washington, D.C., where in the mall you have number of the greatest museums on earth, and all of them were packed with people because nothing on earth would replace an actual experience of looking at one of the masterpieces of Van Gogh or Renoir or Leonardo da Vinci and so on and so forth. It's very similar to when people start to say that because of the internet and Kindle and so on and so forth, people are not going to read books anymore, but we still see people holding books and reading from books. So the real experience is not going to diminish, and people will still go to parks, will still go to waterfronts, will still go to museums, will still go to opera houses. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
I will comment after here, after that, because it's very interesting what he said, but I partially agree.
Okay, this is really amazing dialogue. I would like to open the floor for questions now. So if you have a question for the guest, you may raise your hand and turn on your microphone and ask them out loud. I see Rana's iPhone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. By the way, I live in between Cairo and Amman, and right now I am in Cairo. I'm Jordanian myself. So it's very interesting. This lecture is very, very interesting for me. I have a question for Mr. Murad. The Metropolitan of Amman is a de facto now. It's there, and we have to deal with it as it is. So I think it's a bit unrealistic to send people back from where they came from or send them back to their villages. My question is, why, when we tackle the current situation of the Metropolitan Amman, why isn't we expanding towards the east where the desert is, instead of expanding on the fertile land towards the south? You know, on the road to the airport and further down, this is all fertile agricultural land, and a lot of residential buildings and housings are built there. Why don't we go towards the east and save this agricultural land for green areas or for agriculture if possible? So this is my number one question. Okay. The number two question is, have we in Jordan looked into a metro, an underground network away from the historical city of downtown Amman to go towards, you know, where the artery streets are, like Mecca Street, Medina Street, the University Road where the fast bus is now. Have we considered a metropolitan, an underground network to solve this area and away from the historical city where you might find some, archaeological assets under the ground?
Thank you, Rana, for your two questions. First of all, what you said about expansion towards the east and curbing the expansion towards the west. This was one of the recommendations made by Max and King in 1957. It was, and they provided drawings where you can see that Amman should end at the current Shmeisani, which is the business district of the whole city. And we had at that time, some years later, the strongest prime minister that we ever had in Jordan, who is Wasf al-Tall. Wasf al-Tall himself, he loved agriculture, and he tried very much not to allow people to go westwards and build on agricultural land. Even Wasf al-Tall himself couldn't stop the urban sprawl towards the west. I agree with you totally, but we shouldn't do the same fairer twice and more. Why expanding overall? Why expanding in a city? We had some years ago the idea, like in Egypt, and the prime minister who adopted that, he studied in Egypt, and he was a prime minister, and thereafter he was once again our ambassador to Cairo. He is Dr. Hani al-Mulki. Dr. Hani al-Mulki wanted to adopt the same idea that was done in Cairo and established a new Cairo. I had a press gathering with the mayor himself. We were two people, myself and him, and I'm still against establishing a new city eastward towards Amman, as you said, towards the desert, because this is not how cities are created. This is a wrong idea of expansion. The issue of Cairo, and Dr. Ali can elaborate more, I think, this is another issue, and the cause of that is putting more people and allowing more people to enter the city, that the city became fed up with people. Enough people is shouting the city. This is for the first question. The second one is having an underground. You are trying to fix a problem with another problem. I think that the topography of Amman allow having such tunnels, and we did that. Nafaq al-Haddadi, if you know, this is in the central of Amman, Shara King Hussein Street, and it was very, it was not a big one, because if you have a hill and you through the hill you can connect the two sizes. The problem is that it is too late. It is too late to do such. If you know the Nafaq al-Haddadi and the intersection there at the Bank al-Markazi Central Bank, you can almost take the left and get into this tunnel. I think that this is one issue. The other issue is it is too expensive. Too expensive for having a metro in a city like Amman. Metro is suitable for more flat cities, and you don't have only if there is a must, you will do and go through tunnels. I think we have to do just a reaction of what you said, letting people go back. This is a strategy that we are practicing now. And now there is a law at the parliament, and it will be approved, I think, in the next weeks, which is towards decentralization. Decentralization don't mean sending people back. It is providing work opportunities there, and to go there and build a home and a life where work is available.
Mr. Murad, I just want to, I'm sorry, maybe I should have been clearer about expansion towards the east, expanding Amman towards the east. What I meant by that is creating a suburb where, for housing projects for the unprivileged people or for the low-income people. I did not really mean to create a new city, just, you know, a suburb for, because all the housing projects in Amman are actually made for rich people who can afford them.
No, excuse me. Here, I want to interrupt you. I presented this case at the beginning, and it is a new liberal thinking that led to what you said right now. In the 70s, we had in East Amman, and we have several projects done by the Housing Corporation in East Amman, in Abu Nsair also, and it was very suitable. But the new liberal thinking had issued in 1989 a new housing strategy, and prevented the Housing Corporation to deliver housing units in order to enable the private sector to have the upper hand on the market. And that's why you will find that the private sector is seeking to have smaller plots. Smaller plots will need to have in the division of land. You will get deformed plots and lands, smaller ones, rather than having good developed, good planned areas as done by the Housing Corporation for several in the east and in the north of Amman. I think just adjusting this policy and reverting to the policy that was before 1989 will enhance the urban fabric in Amman. And that's why we think, and once again, I want to go back to Ali, to Dr. Ali, Professor Ali, as he said, how many people can enter an opera house? 500,000 people? I think that these times are not valid anymore. I don't want, and how much money you have to pay in order to get to Barber of Baghdad, written by Goethe, the German writer. How many people can enter? I am against your view, excuse me. I am for culture for people, culture through what is available and what has been made available through virtual reality.
Thank you, Professor Murad. As time is running out, we will take the last question. Mr. Ali, the mic with you.
Thank you, Lama. And first of all, I want to thank Professor Ali and Professor Murad for this precious and interesting conversation. And really, it's this debate and sometimes this argument, it's very informable, and I am really was so interested to be one of the audience here in this conversation. I want to make some comments. Really, I have many comments, but I believe that the time is not enough. I want to agree with the Professor Ali that it's not good, and really I think it's not the kind of human rights to prevent people to come to the cities, because really the people, especially in our cities, and I'm talking from Baghdad, and I think the case in Baghdad is maybe similar to the case in Amman and Cairo. So it's not appropriate to prevent people to come to the cities and to prevent them for looking for their chances to live and to hope, like Mr. Professor Ali said. So I studied in Seoul in South Korea and get my master there. So I think and I found Seoul really it's the same area and the same maybe population for Baghdad. But when I am compare between the planning and how the state or how the municipality there in Seoul looking to their cities and how ours in Baghdad looking to, I think it's sorry for comparison. I believe that the good planning and the insistence of the government to build a city which is decent and comfortable for the people and focusing on activities maybe not like that we think and looking for the way of thinking for people, because that's what specifically what I want to talk about is the community, the role of the community to build the good planning and how to support it. In Seoul, and I was one of these committees as a volunteer, there was like workshops and committees made by the government of Seoul, and it chose some kinds of people which it's in different level of education and different level of even in social habits and even in ages or something like that, and start to discuss with them about the planning or the plan that the government want to implement in their cities. And this really, this case and this issue made and empowered the plan that the Seoul city government want to implement and give it full support to success. So I really here I want to I think the way of thinking even here in Arab countries is start to change. Now it's not like before, maybe 10 or 20 years. So even here, if I'm talking about Baghdad, now in Baghdad we are looking for some maybe luxurious activities and want from the government to build not just roads and housing and something and etc. From the government. So the way of thinking we need to focus on, we need to discuss and we need to analyze the way of thinking of people if we want to start, because really now we are a step on the level of start. We are here in our country, we are not, we don't have the appropriate plans to start or to implement metropolitans. So now we are just in a level or a step of discussion. So I think the first step we need to take, and I'm talking about Baghdad and Baghdad people specifically, is how to convince the people that what I want to do, I'm talking about as a governor, what I want to do is for your benefits. And I want to build another city because the city is here in Baghdad, it's almost died. And all the solutions, all the traditional solutions is not valid yet, not valid for more. So the way of thinking, it's very important. And even I'm talking with some administrator here in my municipality of Baghdad when I work, and I asked them to add some, I think it's socialist to our committees and start to make how to analyze the behaviors of people, the way of thinking. How can I convince them? How can I rebuild the trust between the government and the people, and how I start a good plan? Because for the city like Baghdad, I think it's not easy to fail, because we don't have the time, we don't have the money, we don't have the support to fail and then success again. So I want to ask Professor Murad, because maybe the case in Amman is similar to Baghdad. He said that we need to prevent people to come Baghdad. When I studied in Korea, one of our Professor Ha, he's one of the biggest urban planners in Seoul. He said that maybe it's a well-known statement. He said that the city like a body, and Abadi is still growing, and he needs more facilities. So what the problem if we made a new cities around the mother city and deal with these cities like our hands or our food? So these cities will be like a part of the city. Okay, sir. So please,
may I excuse me, the moderator? May I answer the question?
Yes, sir. I promise. Yes, sir.
I will give you an example from your country. I was the project manager of updating the master plan of Kirkuk. And I went there with my team, and although it was very hard because ISIS was at the front.
Which year, sir?
I don't want to mention, okay? And we created, just to answer your question, we tried when this, as you know, the master plan was originally done by Doxiadis, okay? And we tried to update the master plan within a new vision focusing on economy, as you know. In Kurdistan, all these you have three main spots, Sulaimaniya and Kirkuk and Erbil, and each and each of them are trying to establish a foot within a country that you know the situation there. By doing that, excuse me, but please mute all. By doing that, we didn't prevent people from coming to Baghdad, but we opened opportunities for them to have investment in Kirkuk through planning and regulations. That's what I am calling for. I'm not asking or calling for preventing people from coming to cities. This is a thing that you cannot legally do because they have the citizenship. Although in Berlin and big cities, you are not allowed to enter with your car within a certain circle of the city fabric, because you will create more congestion. Okay, and I want to cut short. What you are saying is very important, and please don't misunderstand me that I am calling for to prevent people from coming to. Opening other opportunities will, as Dr. Ali and others you will find in Arabic we say محل ما ترزق تلزق. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for this clarification. So I really, because maybe I didn't visit Amman before, so maybe the case is not similar between.
You are
Amman
welcome.
And Baghdad.
You are welcome. Just call me when you are there.
Now I am in the committee between Amman and municipality of Amman and municipality of Baghdad. Maybe there will be visit this year. Okay, thank you, sir. So I just maybe okay, sir. In Baghdad we have the spaces, we have the area, so we can. We have the time or the plan for future extension, but really I think there is two factors.
Same done by Doxiadis also.
Yes, sir. I think there's two factors or 2 points we need to put in our mind if we need to make a start for planning for metropolitan. Really, I think it's a fact that we live in metropolitans here in our countries, especially the capitals. Because for Baghdad now we are almost 10 million in our city, so it's almost metropolitan. So what I want to finish my comment. First one is the insistence of the government to implement the planning, and second the role of the community to support this planning. And thank you.
Thank you, Ali. I hope you all enjoyed this amazing dialogue. I want to give the mic to Salma to close this session. The mic with you.
Well, I would like to mention, as Lama mentioned in the chat box, that a recorded version of this webinar will be available in International Metropolitan Fellowship channel on YouTube. And finally, thank you everyone. We appreciate you being here with us. A special thanks to our guests today, Professor Murad and Professor Ali. It was a pleasure to have you with us, as well as many thanks for Planogram platform for their cooperation with us. May I ask you to open your camera to take a photo to save it in our memories?
With a smile, please.
Okay, thanks again for joining us today, and we will see you next time.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.